Alrighty, good morning. Happy Tuesday. Today is March the 12th, and we are going to start on our colonial broadsides today. Lesson 3, preparing to write. Okay, so this is today's learning target. I can identify the characteristics of a broadside. In this unit, we will write opinion text using the format people used during the colonial times. Broadsides. Today, we will look at examples of real broadsides to understand their characteristics or qualities. So, opinions during the American Revolution. How do people share their opinions? Gonna give you guys a moment to take an opportunity to share your thoughts there. Alrighty. In modern times, people share their opinions through social media. This slide may be a little old. Maybe some of you don't use Twitter. You may be more familiar with Snapchat or TikTok or Instagram, right? There's still newspapers. Back when I was a kid, they used to actually deliver newspapers to your door. I remember my parents having me, excuse me, my parents having me go fetch the newspaper. So the internet, there's blogs, there's articles. So those are some of the ways that we share our opinions today is definitely the internet, social media. So Twitter, Facebook, TikTok, newspapers, editorials, blogs, etc. Alrighty, so how did people share their opinions during the American Revolution before things like Twitter and blogs existed? Okay, how do you think people did that? I'll give you guys a moment to share some of your thoughts there. Alrighty, so today we're going to talk about that. Okay, so printers. During the American Revolution, printers had an important job. Their job was to use their printing press to create documents that could easily educate, advertise, share, and give someone's opinion. Okay, so if you look at this big machine right here up top on the right hand corner, that is a printing press. They actually would have to hand print. They'd have, well, not hand print, but they would take machines and would run paper through them to print documents. These documents were often posted in public spaces where people could read them. They often weren't able to print enough copies for everyone to have their own copy, so they printed fewer and posted them in places where many people could read them. So, this is an example right here of how that would have looked like back then. Okay, so today we're going to look at some examples of broadsides. Okay, go ahead and turn to workbook page 100. We did this exit ticket yesterday if you were here. Read the first excerpt. Gloriously fighting in the cause of liberty and country. What is the author's opinion of the American Revolution? If I say I'm gloriously fighting in the cause of liberty, meaning freedom, and country, wanting to establish your own country, is that the loyalists or the patriots? This author thinks that colonies should be free from British rule. And I know this because the quote talks about liberty, meaning freedom, and fighting for a cause that is glorious. So they think it is an honor to fight for freedom and to freedom from specifically the British Crown and to have their own country, which would be the United States of America. Now let's take a look at the second excerpt. All of the colonies are firm and unshaken in their attachment to the common cause of America, and they are now ready with their lives and fortunes to assist us in defeating the cruel enemy. What is this author's opinion of the American Revolution? Actually, let me backtrack. Let's take a moment to break that down here. Okay, so all the colonies are firm and unshaken in their attachment to the common cause of America. If I'm firm on my opinion, what do you think that means? So if I'm firm on my opinion, it means that I'm not going to change my mind. I'm I have my mind set on something, right? So the people are strong-willed and they are united they basically want to make America their own country and they're all together in this. Does that make sense? Okay. And they think that the cruel enemy is the British crown. So this author also thinks the colonies should be free from the king. I know because the quote talks about Britain as the cruel enemy. Okay, so we're going to look at some examples of a broadside. You're going to ask yourself the question, what can I infer about broadsides from the pictures or the text on this poster? Because these broadsides were written over 200 years ago, sometimes the language used in them is not a language we use to write or speak with today. And the symbols that they used are different symbols than what we would use today in 2024. A lot of time has passed since that time frame. It was hundreds of years ago at this point. Also, some of the handwriting is really, really small. So the titles are big, but the print is small. So Miss Ford is going to pause the video and give you an opportunity to look at broadside number one. The question is, what can you infer about the broadsides from the pictures and or the text on this poster? So in this broadside, the printer used the image of black coffins across the top to show how many men died in the Battle of Lexington and Concord. This broadside was sent throughout Lexington and Concord and the 13 colonies to spread the word about what the Patriots saw as British regulars' gruesome attack on the people of Lexington, Massachusetts. So this was a way to spread news. They wanted to spread the word about what happened. Okay, gloriously fighting in the cause of liberty and country, all of the colonies are firm and unshaken in their attachment to the common cause of America. And they are now ready with their lives and fortunes to assist us in defeating the cruel enemy. So basically, what they're saying is after that issue, after all those men who died, they are even more determined to keep on fighting. Okay, now let's take an opportunity to look at broadside number two. Same question. What can you infer about broadsides from the pictures and or text in this poster? So Ms. Ford will take a moment to pause the video and give you an opportunity to look at that. So this broadside describes the Battle of Lexington and Concord from the perspective of the British, right? The British officer who felt the Patriot colonists started the fight. So the first broadside, we looked at the perspective from the Patriots. This broadside, we're going to look at the perspective of the Loyalists, which are British supporters. This affair happened through the rashness and imprudence of a few who began firing on troops at Lexington, or it was a preconcerted scheme. It was a preconcerted scheme to oppose the king's troops whenever there should be a favorable opportunity for it. They heard many guns. They heard many gun signals and ringing of alarm bells, which convinced them the country was rising against. Excuse me, sorry. Okay, so broadside number three. What can you infer about the broadsides from the pictures and or text on this poster? So Ms. Ford is going to give you an opportunity to look at this one as well. Okay, so this broadside is a plea for the Congress to officially put together an army to fight the British. The author, a well-known patriot, is giving his opinion about what the colonists should do to protect themselves and fight for their liberty. Alrighty, broadside number four. So again, some of these documents are old. It may be a little bit hard to see, but broadside number 4 is an example of how news was spread during the American Revolution. It tells what happened during the Battle of Lexington and Concord. However, it also shares an opinion. For example, at the end, it says, "The sword is now drawn, and God knows when it will be sheathed." So, a sheath is a protective covering, right? So, if you think of a knife, the sheath is the covering that protects the knife so you don't get poked, right, or cut. So, some of these words are different. So, please feel free to ask any questions, and if I see anything that stands out, I'll do the best I can to break down those definitions. Is this is some older language here. Okay, broadside number 5. So this is another example. Excuse me. This is another broadside giving information about the events of the Battle of Lexington and Concord. The author's perspective is seen from this quote: about 1,200 of the regular troops, the British, are now actually engaged in butchering and destroying our brethren in the most inhumane manner. What does butchering mean? Think about that. If your mom goes to a butcher shop for dinner, what do you think that means? What are they doing to the meat if you go to a butcher shop? Alrighty, if you said cutting, you are correct. So if you go to a butcher shop and say your mom is ordering steak for dinner, she goes to a butcher shop to get fresh meat, they have to chop that meat up, right? And slice it and prepare it so that you can eat. So in this case, they're saying they were butchering people, and that's pretty dark, but it's a war, and it can get very violent sometimes. And in this case, um, it was a lot of violence. And it said destroying our brethren in the most inhumane manner. So basically, people are being murdered, they're being killed in this war, and they're saying it is inhumane what happened at the Battle of Lexington. A lot of people lost their life for this fight. Alrighty, broadside number 6. This broadside shows another way that colonists often share their opinions about current events in verse or song. The author's opinion is clear in these lines: "Our liberty, our life is now invaded, and freedom's brightness charms are darkly shaded. Let us with hearts of steel now stand." We also see an example of how printers used engravings to include an image. Let's see, excuse me, to include an image that managed to draw people's attention. Excuse me, I think I could draw that out a bit more. Think about this, right? If you have an ad, they use bright colors, bold print, different fonts, maybe beautiful illustrations because they want to draw your attention to it. They did the exact same thing back then. They did the exact same thing back then. So just think about that. Okay, broadside number 7 and 8. So these broadsides were posted as list of supplies needed by the Continental Patriot Army. They tell people to donate to the soldiers who are fighting for freedom. Because think about it, wars costed a lot of money. You have to feed the soldiers, they have to pay for weapons. Um, Using those cannon bombs, that stuff costed a lot of money. And even today, when America goes, I mean, not that we're in a war, but I'll use when I was a kid, there was the war between Iraq and the US going on. It costed millions and millions and millions of dollars to do that. Taxpayers had to pay for that war, right? The same way that the British charged the American the early America wasn't a country yet, but the colonists that were in the Americas, they needed their money. They overtaxed them because they were trying to pay for that the French and Indian War, which costed a lot of money. Um, Keep that in mind. It costs, wars are expensive, right? So they're like, please donate, please support the patriot cause, right? They needed to advertise that so people could take their money and help them their own country. Okay, so let's talk through this. What patterns or themes did you notice in all of the poster walk posters? Alrighty, so now that we've had an opportunity to have some student volunteers to share that, Miss Ford will go ahead and talk through that. We saw the theme of liberty, which is fighting for freedom. We saw the theme of patriots saying, like a broken record, hey, come support the cause. Help us fight against the British rule. They're killing people, they're butchering people, they're committing inhumane acts against people. We need you on our side. If you can't join the war, pay, right? At least give your money so that the soldiers that are going to be fighting on the forefront, we can give them what they need, feed them, clothe them, give them weapons and that sort of thing. You also see a theme of the loyalists defending themselves as well from their perspective, right? So you've got two, literally like the book, divided loyalties. You got two different groups of people and they're clashing. So now that you've seen some more broadsides, what do you think broadsides were used? What did they use broadsides for during the American Revolution? What was the point of a broadside? Okay, those advertisement, those newspapers that we just looked at. What was the point? What are they trying to achieve there? Alrighty, so the answers may vary, but they're trying to spread the word. Whether that was news about the Battle of Lexington and Concord, right? Or rather that was the news about, hey, come support the cause, come pay for help us raise money for this cause, right? They were trying to they conveyed information about the war, and people would meet in these common spaces and they would go read it and see what was going on. And then those newspapers, people would pay for those so they could see what was going on in their colonies, right? So, what was one characteristic you saw in most of the broadsides you looked at today? What is one characteristic, one thing you saw in most of them? Take a moment to turn and talk to your neighbor, actually, about that. Alrighty, so Miss Ford, her answer, this is just my answer. You may have a totally different answer, and that is okay, right? But for me, I think that I saw the theme of freedom. The fight, the liberty is the word that keeps coming back to me. One characteristic I saw in most of the broadsides we looked at today is the pursuit of freedom. Freedom from the British crown, to be very specific, from the Patriots' perspective. What was one opinion you saw expressed in the broadsides? Alrighty, so this is what Miss Ford thinks again. Opinions are different. If you have a different opinion, never feel bad about that, right? That's what the purpose of classroom discussions are for, because we all have something valuable to add. So, in my opinion, one opinion, well, in my opinion, one opinion, something that I saw was cruel. The British soldiers being called cruel, and they were basically called murderers. They were deemed cruel, right? So that was a patriot's opinion expressed in some of those broadsides there. Alrighty, so I'm gonna take an opportunity to teach about the characteristics of a broadside. Okay. So the characteristics of a broadside. So broadsides are posters announcing news, information, or events, proclamations, advertisements, or calls for help to support a certain cause, right? So broadsides share an opinion or an event or topic. They give reasons and evidence to support the opinion. They try to convince the reader of something. They share details about news or an event. They have words in bolds, italics, or all capital letters. They have big, large headings, right? They have an introduction paragraph that has enough information to stand alone. They have columns, so they're nice and separated. They have dates and they have locations. They include printed by or by. They start with words like gentleman or sir, right? Because remember, this is a different time frame. So you will be writing a broadside. And this is our first day discussing it. Today, we're just trying to get our feet wet with what a broadside even is. How does it look? What's an example? Because you will be writing your own from a patriot or a loyalist perspective. The end.